Man, what up? I want to highlight my brothers for a second. Mainly the brothers who are currently dealing with grief, right? Grief over the loss of a job, over the realization that you don't know who you are in your identity, or you're grieving the loss of a loved one, right? You are grieving the loss of love, whether it have been a spouse, your girl, right? The reason I want to talk to y'all today is because this has been the life I've been living for the last 7 months, right? As a newly solo dad of 4, widower. My wife and I have been married almost 13 years before she passed, and learning to navigate life in this emotional environment within myself has been like no other journey I've ever taken. I've had several people over the months say to me like, "Oh, you're dealing with this well, or you're so strong." Like, I get it, and that strength is something I wish I did not have to exhibit. Right? You don't want to be super strong in moments of distress, because the stronger you're being is just a reflection of the weight that you're carrying. So that's something to think about for the people who always admire, the strong ones. It hurts being strong, and I get that. But I want to share with y'all a few of the things that have helped me, right? A few of the things that are helping me, because apparently I'm doing so great. I have conversations with counselors, and I've talked to a few therapists and things like that. And everybody's like, "So why are we having this conversation?" I don't do anything except show up and talk my talk, right? I know what I know. And this whole experience has done, or the main thing that this entire experience has done for me is bring me closer to that source that I know is at the center of life, right? Some people call it God, people call it the universe. We're not going to have that conversation today. We'll get into it another time. The fact of the matter is, I know experientially, right, existentially, that the only reason I'm here and I'm sane is because God is at the center of it, right? However one may look to define the infinite spirit, I know within myself that that's been the key. And so there are just a couple of things that I've been thinking about that I believe would be helpful for all y'all, man. So if this is for you, go ahead, drop me a comment and let me know what's been the main thing that you've been working through, right? What's been most complex for you to deal with? And if this ain't for you, but you know somebody who might be going through it, go ahead and send them this video. So the first thing I want you to understand is that how you feel, your grief, it's its own thing. It doesn't need your judgment. You don't need to make it bad. You don't need to make it wrong. It is what it is, right? Grief, I have found, and I've learned or am learning, that just like these trees, just like the grass, the kids over there at the park, your hair, your fingernails, right? They're all expressions of life. All of it is a movement of life. And that energy, it moves on its own. It doesn't need your help. It doesn't care about how you feel. It is going to do what it does on its own. And grief is the same way. Grief exists, they say, because we've loved. Because we've had such a deep connection to a significant person in our life, because we have had such a significant connection to a certain identity, right? I remember when I stopped playing college football, I thought I was going to the league, and I put all my intensity and effort into making that dream a reality. And when it didn't come to fruition, I was stuck for a minute. And I know a lot of athletes go through that, right? They spend so much of their time in their life investing in their sport that when they're done, the question of who am I becomes one of the hardest things to answer, because your sport, right, was your thing for probably over a decade. And you came to adulthood, or, whatever level you start playing at, right? Like, you came into your own through that medium of expression. And when it's not there anymore, it's like, yo, what's next? What is life now? Having lost a spouse, there's so much that just isn't going to be the same. And I can't expect it to be, because she and I built a life. We, parented 4 children together. And I've been saying all the time, man, like, this life is a 2-player game. Like, it says so on the box. Like, I wouldn't have signed up for this if I was going to do it by myself, but God knows. And so there's a lot that has to be worked through. And the grief of recognizing that my partner isn't coming back. The grief of recognizing that, I can't go back to being an athlete. I can't go back to not having responsibilities. I can't go back to a time when life was simpler. But I have to be present in the here and now, because this is where life is occurring. So because, like, we were so deeply connected to what was, when it's not there, it does leave a void. It does create an emptiness that we have to sit with. And how you feel inside of that, like I said, man, don't judge it, because judging it will make it worse. When you make it bad, if you say, I shouldn't be feeling like this, or I need to get over it, or whatever, you're going to make it worse. Because grief is its own movement, right? However you feel, let it come up. Whatever you feel, whatever is occurring inside of you emotionally, just let it be there. Because again, just like your hair and your nails grow, grief is going to move through you, and it's going to rise and fall when it wants. And kind of on that note, right, I've seen, people in different groups on the internet and things like that, talk about their grief. And I'm not going to judge them, right? We all experience it differently. We all move through it differently. And the way I have learned to deal with it is not as a backpack. A lot of people I see talk about grief and their experience. And again, this is no judgment on them. It's just my observation and my opinion. They talk about grief as if it's a backpack, right? As if it's this weight that they carry that is preventing them from moving forward in life, that is keeping them where they are, and they can't move from it, right? That's not how I relate to grief. And you can relate to your grief however you want, right? You're an adult, it's your world, do what you're going to do. For me, though, I've learned to relate to grief as simply another ingredient in the soil of my life. Here's what I mean by that. I didn't get here in like this stage in life in a vacuum. I didn't just show up and I'm like this. No, I'm a result of every experience, every lesson I've learned in school, everything I've learned and seen from my parents, being around family. I'm a result of the shows I've watched. I'm a result of the books I've read, the audiobooks I've listened to, the podcasts I've listened to and watched. I'm a result of making this content here. Ultimately, I am a result of the thoughts that I think about myself, right? And now, having had this experience of walking through this healing journey with my wife, having her transition out of this physical reality, and now I'm left with the fallout and the rebuilding of a whole new world. I choose to relate to my grief as just being another ingredient added to the mix. And what that does is it helps me recognize that, okay, my heart's going to be a little bit more tender. I'm going to be a bit more open emotionally to things that are occurring around me. It's going to mean that certain things are going to soften my heart at any given moment. And I've learned not to be resistant to that, because resistance will only prolong your growth. By preventing that energy from moving when it wants, by judging it, getting upset, saying, I shouldn't feel this way, all you're going to do is essentially dig yourself a hole. Like I said, grief isn't a backpack. It can be Again, just that added fertilizer to whatever your life is becoming, to whatever you want to create in your life. Grief becomes an aspect of that, right? The experience that you've had with your loved one becomes an expression of that. And so you never have to try to make it okay. It's okay to not be okay. You feel me? There's one last thing that I'm gonna share. And this is what I think has been most essential for me, right? I've read a few of the mystics of old, right? Cats like Teresa of Avila, the Cloud of Unknowing, St. John of the Cross, guys like that. And of course, you got Jesus, Rumi, Khalil Gibran, a lot of different voices, but all speaking from this mystical perspective, right? And now when I talk about the mystics, I'm not talking about magic. I'm not talking about, woo-woo spirituality or anything like that. There's a place for it, right? But the reason I believe the mystic voices have something to say to us in very practical, everyday regards is because very few people relate to reality as strongly as the mystics. And it's kind of a paradox, right? Because you hear, I say the word mystic, and immediately, your mind runs off into, again, spirituality, right? Woo-woo-ness. But no, the mystics were firmly grounded in the experience of what is. Not only that, they were governed essentially by their experience of the divine. So they were walking this path, they were walking in this life, having essentially a dual experience. Right? Again, firmly rooted in the reality of what is and firmly rooted in spirit, in the divine. And for me, on this path, as I work through and work with my grief, that's been helpful, right? And in one way it's been helpful has been that it's helped me understand more that this life isn't meant to last forever. I was laying in bed one day and I was looking at some pictures of my wife, and something said to me, like, yeah, you thought it was going to last forever. almost like kind of poking fun at me, right? And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, no, you were fooled into believing that it would last forever. It was never meant to last forever. And I don't say that to be flippant. I don't say that to be trite. But if you think about life, if you think about the world, everything moves in cycles. The seasons, like just day and night, how we measure time, right? Our watches go in a circular motion. Our calendar, right? The year itself, and as the earth revolves around the sun, everything in existence is moving on cycles. And if you think about the life cycle of birth, life, and death, I remember one time I was at work and I was, saw an older couple, and I looked at them and I was like, oh, look at them in the twilight of their lives, right? Because they were up there in age, they're about 80 years old or so. And so, at any moment they could have been called up. And at the same time, the same is true about us, right? There's no guarantee that after making this video, I'm going to make it home tonight. No guarantee. I can want to, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I wanted my wife to come home from the hospital last time we were in it. Didn't happen though. And so coming to the understanding that our time here is limited and the connection that we have through spirit, or the fact that essentially, right, in our essence, at our core, we are spirit. We recognize that although this experience may end, life persists. I was taken aback one day. As I was looking through some paperwork, as one of my children ran up on me. I was taken aback because years ago, I sent my wife this poem, and it was from Rumi, and it actually ended up in her obituary. And it wasn't done on purpose. It wasn't done because I thought it was good for the moment. But it's fitting, right? He said, "Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with their heart and soul, there's no such thing as separation." And that's essentially what I want to say to y'all. You may have lost physically the one you love, but in reality, in truth, they persist. Their life continues. Because life isn't the body. Life isn't this physical existence. Life is spirit. Life is source. Life is God. God is life. And so although it hurts being physically separated, and there are a whole lot of effects that that we feel as a result of that. And I'll get into that here on the channel, right? When we talk about the nervous system and like dealing with grief and how that affects us. But ultimately, there's no separation. There never has been. And the more we can kind of root and ground ourselves in that truth, in that reality, I can't say to make it easier. I can't say it'll, make you stronger. But leaning on the truth will help us to defend ourselves against the lies that arise. So I hope there was something in here that was helpful for y'all. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Reach out to me via email. I got you. Much love.